So thank you very much. We come to the last presentation before wrapping up, so I hope that you have still energy to listen to me. The talk is about privacy-friendly sharing of health data using the reference architecture. I thought that as a software engineer, it would be fun to talk about data protection in front of a lawyer, but unfortunately, Professor Martinez left, so I will not have so much problems then. Mainly it's a joint work with my colleagues, and I'm presenting on this, and mainly it's talking about adoption or modification of IDS-RAM, International Data Spaces Reference Architecture Model. I will say IDS-RAM from now on. How it can be adopted or modified to support actually the patient's requirements, mainly security and privacy requirements. So we have heard a lot about this reference architecture model. I don't want to repeat all this stuff again. And we have seen that there are many different data spaces for various domains. So we have, for example, for automotive industry, we have Catena X. From mobility, transport, and tourism, we have Iona X. And skills analytics and matching, there's also some projects that I'm also involved in in them. It's about skills, Prometheus X. We have heard of another presentation today about Skill Lab. So there are different projects that they are trying to create data spaces. But let's talk about health data spaces. So we heard about this European regulation on health data spaces, which this year came into power. It was proposed in 2022, I think. The aim is empowering individuals through increased digital access and control. So control is very important keyword here, and fostering a single market for electronic health record system, and of course providing a trustworthy and efficient setup for the use of data for different purposes such as research, innovation, policy making, and regulatory activities. So what's the problem here, or what's the challenge here? You see here in this picture the Minister of Health in Germany, called Lauterbach. And at some point in last year, he emphasized that there is already a huge amount of data, but it is stored in separate silos. And we don't want to have silos. We want to have data spaces, interoperability, talking to each other between different communities. So just only having data silos, it's not enough for us. So there is this concept of health data spaces, but it faces critical challenges addressing privacy concerns. So we are all aware of GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, but there are also a series of standards or regulations such as Cybersecurity Act, AI Act, Resilience Act. They are all coming in the last 2-3 years also in power. So privacy and security and maintaining and privacy and confidentiality of sensitive data is very important. And in health data space, normally you have sensitive data. So that's really important. And if you fail to do so, you will have damage to the reputation of the service provider. It could be a governmental organization. And you have also public embarrassment of the people, because nobody wants to have their sensitive data about their health be public just without any reason or consent. So in this research, 2 research questions are actually aimed to be answered. The first one is actually some kind of basis for the second one. In the first one, it's important to understand how the data sharing contract can be designed for health data spaces to specify privacy and security requirements, and then how the IDS-RAM could be adopted or modified to support a patient's specific requirements. So let's now concentrate on these 2 research questions. When we are talking about how can we actually create contracts, we went one step before and thought that, okay, what kind of terminology we are facing there? At that time that we were actually doing this research, there was no formally or widely adopted structure from contract offers when it came to the health data spaces. So still, I think there is no specific contract for health data spaces. We have the protocol from the IDS, which I think I saw some updates in 2024. They are talking about policies, how on the usage of data, but it's still also not a health data spaces. And we know all that EDC itself says that EDC is not one size fits all, but you actually have to create for your own data spaces and requirements. You have to create your own policies or adoptions to the data spaces. So we want to have a kind of structured contract, which actually structured contracts outline the scope, purpose, responsibilities, and terms of data sharing. And we want to establish a framework that reduces ambiguity, mitigates disputes, and facilitates communication. In the first place, we created an ontology. The ontology is not actually created from scratch, so we didn't want to create the wheel again. But we look into the state of the art and try to create this ontology, which actually somehow it meets privacy and security requirements in the European Union, and the other sides, the health data spaces. And I don't know if you're aware of the definition of ontology, and ontology defines the foundational terminologies in specific domains, for example, and what are the key terms there. So the state of the art is analyzed, and we leverage technologies that are already present, for example, usage control language of IDS-RAM, ODRL, GDPR text, PRUVO. It's about provenance, and we come up with this ontology. The ontology, this is only the starting point. It's created based on the key terms in the EHDS, European Health Data Spaces Regulation, and GDPR, but in my opinion, and actually in our future work, we are trying or aiming to actually refine this type of ontology, which we consider different regulations such as Cybersecurity Act, AI Act, and so on. And based on this ontology, then a structure for the contracts is offered. There are similar works also by IDS-RAM. At that time, in 2022, they were not so actually implemented. And for our purpose, which is the next research question, answering the next research question, we created this kind of structure for the contracts. You have a unique identifier, title, description, metadata, this is all the normal stuff, but you can have also defined policies there. For example, we are aware of GDPR. One article 5 of GDPR, I think it's the most important article of the GDPR, talking about principles on data processing. And one of the principles is data minimization. And for example, to keep data only for 90 days, you can define such a policy in the contract which says that after 90 days, the data should be deleted. So this is how we answered the research question by creating an ontology and proposing a contract offer structure. Let's come to the answering the second research question, where we want to adopt the IDS-RAM for the needs of the patients. So in this health data spaces, actually the most important actor is a patient, citizen. Why? Because they are the data subjects and they provide their health data, which is actually very sensitive. So data subject patient is introduced as an active role that has control over the data. And here you see that the data subject would be the patient. This is slightly different from the IDS-RAM, where you have data provider and data owner. Here, instead of data owner, we have defined data collector and data subject. Data collector at the end of the day could be the same as a data provider. So some intermediary organization, for example, collect the data from the data subjects, which are the patients, and then give it to, for example, to a hospital, and the hospital can then be in the data spaces and provide this data, for example, to an insurance company. So this is how actually we said that the patients should be considered in this as an active role, and why? Because GDPR, the topic of or the sense of the GDPR is providing controls to the data subjects, and that's what we want to aim to reach here, and that's the reason that the patient is defined as a specific role here. And then we consider the well-structured or well-known data privacy strategies. This is not our work, but it's kind of defined strategies based on the principles of the GDPR. And we use this type of strategies in the processing layer of the IDS RAM to slightly different the data flows, which I will present it in the next slide. So the IDS RAM have 5 layers. The business layer define the roles, the data subject role, patient is defined newly there, and then in the processing layer we also try to annotate the processes with these types of design strategies, saying that how can we actually give control to the data in such a health data spaces. IDS RAM have, for example, the onboarding process or a data exchange process, but we also define another process here, which is update operation. In the data transfer or data exchange process, you see that we try to give the possibility to data subjects be informed if at some point the data is sent to another organization in the data spaces, so they're always informed. And there are different strategies there, for example, to when the data is sent to the another participant in the data space. These strategies could be, for example, differential privacy, anonymization, and so on. And the update operation, this is actually not part of the IDS realm. This is somehow new part. And the idea is there to giving the control to the patients. The patient can ask where he or she provided the data, which type of the data are you sharing with the other organizations. He or she gets this data and say that, okay, I don't want to share my data anymore, and provide this information to the data provider, and the data provider is obliged to actually create a new data model without the data of the data subject, and then it's possible to share the data once again. So this is actually also how we answered the second question, where the patients as an active role is considered in the IDS RAM. Considering the evaluation of the paper, we have used different methodologies to evaluate our paper. One of possible methodology is looking into the ontology, to evaluate the ontology, look into the ontology to see that what is the accuracy, for example, or the performance of ontology. We used a corpus-based methodology where we checked our ontology against 2 specific corpora. One of them is GDPR, the other one is EHDS. And you see that in case of coverage, the results are not so promising. But on one case, I already mentioned that we have to consider more regulations, more standards to create our own, to refine our ontology. And the other case, this GDPR is kind of one size fits all, so it's for all possible domains defined. We are looking only into the health domain. Therefore, some terminologies out of GDPR is not considered in our ontology, and therefore the coverage is not so promising. But this is something that should be actually refined in future. What is our future work? I already mentioned some hints about it. We want to consider more regulations to refine our ontology. Consider the protocol of IDS, which they also define these policies and find synergies. and try to refine the contract structure. We want to also refine our methodology for identifying key terms. You can use different coding techniques. For example, hypothesis coding could be used there, where there we need some kind of help of or assistance of lawyers, where we say that these are the terms that we think that are important. A lawyer should have a look on this and say that, okay, it's okay, green light, and then the methodology actually refine our process. But of course, defining only policies does not mean that everything is perfect. We need kind of verification techniques to statically and dynamically consider, for example, data minimization principle and try to understand how if it is realized in a kind of system or not. So this would be our future work. And conclusion, I talked about try to answer two different research questions. In the first case, I talked about an ontology, which based on this ontology, a contract structure for sharing data in data spaces is defined. And in the second part, I already I mentioned how patients are considered as an active role in data spaces where we want to give this control to the data subject, which is patient, over their data. How can we do this, for example, by giving a possibility to be informed when data is shared and giving to opting out, not sharing my data, how the processes of IDS RAM is changed in this regard. And that's all.
Thank you.